Hello, my name is James Rossiter. I'm a firefighter paramedic for the Pleasant Hill Fire Protection District. For my evaluator, just a couple of things I did want to point out throughout the video. I did teach this, or I taught the lecture part while on shift at a working firehouse, and it was over the 4th of July, so we did have a couple of interruptions. We do not also have access to professional camera gear. This was shot, trying to shoot using an iPhone. So some of the video, especially on the practical aspect of it, is a little bit choppy. For that, I do apologize. I'm just going to have this be at the front of the video, and then I'll meld everything else together as best I can. I appreciate you taking the time to evaluate my video, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.
saying we're starting and it's recording, so just walk in quietly.
Yep. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Rossiter. I'm a firefighter paramedic for Pleasantville Fire Protection District. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of the objectives from Chapter 13 of Essential 7. We're going to be discussing some hose operations and some hose strings. We have some objectives to cover today. Our first objective that we're going to talk about is methods used to deploy fire hose. Our second objective that we're going to discuss is going to be advancing hose lines. And our third is going to be explaining how to operate different types of hose lines, nozzles, and master stream devices. So, let's get started. Also want to turn that on. Alright, so objective number one, I want to describe methods used to deploy fire hose. So, hose rollers. They give us a lot of edge protection, helps protect the hose from getting damaged from going over sharp corners. It's usually a metal frame. Sometimes they have a roller, sometimes they don't. Looks like this one is just a solid piece. It doesn't look like there's any moving components of it, but this rounded edge is still going to protect it from snagging and dragging on the edge. The hose gets pulled up across the rollers, and then this one on the left is a block that has two rollers on the inside of it that's used for helping squeeze all the water out of LDH. Hose collection hose rollers are traditionally limited to hand crank spools, and there are some newer ones that are powered that are push behind and will allow us to roll the hose and drain it at the same time. Should be nice if we had some of these. Hose bridges, also called hose ramps. They prevent damage to hose when vehicles have to drive over it. We really should only be using these when they're laid across an area where it needs to be driven over. They can be used as chafing blocks, and we can put them over small spills so that we can keep the hose line from becoming contaminated. Chafing blocks. Prevents hose abrasions. Charged hose lines will vibrate and rub against surfaces, which can cause abrasions to the hose. These are designed to help prevent that. They can be useful around pumpers where the intake hoses come into contact with pavement or curves. They're usually made of wood, leather, or sections of old truck tires, as can be seen here. Hose straps, hose ropes, and hose chains. Used to carry, pull, or handle charged hose lines. They provide a more secure means to handle a pressurized hose when applying water, and we can use them to secure hoses to ladders. Lance, what's the type of tool used to deploy a fire hose?
A hose tool, the aluminum S-hook.
Okay. Jamie?
A firefighter.
Yeah, I'll take it. Brian?
Strap.
Alright, so we've got a couple of different kinds of hardware, but we're going to talk with hose appliances first. An appliance is any hardware used with hose to control the flow of water. It creates pathways for water throughout the hose layouts. Common appliances include valves, valve devices, fittings, and intake strainers. Ball valves are used in pumper discharges and gated Ys. They open when the handle is in line with the hose. They are closed when the exterior handle is shown to be at a right angle with the hose, and they're used in fire piping systems. Butterfly valves are used on large pump intakes. Do I have a slice for these? No. I'll type those in a second. Butterfly valves are used on large pump intakes and incorporates a flat baffle that will rotate 90 degrees inside of the valve so that you can start pumping water from one side and it'll keep this side shut for leakage, but then when you start flowing out of both sides, it goes back in the middle so you can still flow into both. Sometimes they can be operated on a quarter turn handle. Most of them are automatic, like in our multi-gated FDCs on some of our commercial structures. I'm sorry, that's not a butterfly valve, that is a clapper valve that I'm talking about. The butterfly valve is a flat baffle that turns 90 degrees with the handles. I apologize, I got ahead of myself.
That's all right, buddy.
Gate valves, we use them to control the flow out of a hydrant. It's a baffle that is lowered into the path of water by turning a screw type handle. We've got those in all of our hydrant packs. We've got several kinds of valve devices that we can use to change the flow of water. And it allows a number of hose lines operating on the fire ground to be increased or decreased. So our Y devices, that's where we take one line and split it into two. Our Siamese appliances, which is where we take two lines and connect it into one. We also have large diameter hose appliances, hydrant valves, which we talked about for a second, and then the water thief appliances, which is in line with a hose and allows us to siphon water from that hose. Another kind of water thief, it's not really for water, but is the foam inductor. So that way we're using the flowing of the water to create a suction effect to suck the foam up from the foam container and into the fire line. Hey, looky there, that's what I was just talking about. Alright, talk a little bit about fittings here for a second. Wow, I covered all this already. There we go. So you connect hoses and outlets of different diameters and thread types. That protects our couplings on our standpipes, apparatus intakes and outlets, those are our caps. We have adapters and reducers. So adapters are fittings that connect hose couplings with similar threads and same inside diameter, like double males, double females. They're the most often used of our hose fittings. They allow 2 male couplings or 2 female couplings of the same diameter and thread type to connect. Adapters that connect 2-way couplings onto threaded hydrants outlets are becoming increasingly common. Reducers used to connect smaller diameter hose lines to the end of a larger one. Limits larger hose to supplying one smaller line only. That is the problem that we have going from a reducer. That's why we try to use a gated wide when we can. That way we can split it off into 2 smaller lines instead of just one. And then we talk about what's next. Alright, 5 commonly used hose appliances. Lance, let's have one.
Gated valve.
Okay, Brian?
Reducer.
Jamie?
Cap.
Okay, Amy?
Nozzle.
Yeah, okay, didn't specifically talk about it, but well, a nozzle is an appliance. Another one, Siamese valve.
Yeah.
Or a Siamese tool. One of the ways that we can deploy our hose is a forward hose lay. It's where the hose is deployed from the water source to the incident. The first coupling to come off the hose bed, it should be a female, unless it's a Storts fitting, also called a 2-way. Either coupling will usually work, especially when we have the right appliances and adapters in our hydrant bags. Deploying the hose consists of stopping the apparatus at the hydrant, allowing the firefighter to safely leave the apparatus and secure the hose. The firefighter making the hydrant connection must know the proper procedures for securing and connecting to the hydrant, correct operation of the hydrant valve when we have one that's in use. Then when signaled, the apparatus proceeds to the fire, deploying either single or parallel hose lines from the apparatus. One of the big advantages of a forward lay is that the pumper can remain at the incident scene so that hose equipment and tools are readily available if needed. The pump operator can also see the fire suppression operation and better react to changes at the fire scene than if the pumper was at the hydrant. Making the connection, that's going to be governed by our SOPs and SOGs. The pumper can, simplest way to do it, firefighter jumps off, make sure that door gets shut behind him, climbs up on the back, grab that hydrant bag handle because that's wrapped around the end of our LDH, throw it off, wrap it around. So you want to make sure that we've got our hydrant wrench, the finished section of the hose, and the radio. To ensure that the water arrives quickly at the pump intake, we have to have communication between the hydrant man and the driver operator. So that's where that radio communication is going to be typical. Horns and sirens can be a problem with using those. That's why we want to try to use those radios whenever possible. We don't want to try to yell or use hand signals because there is no standardized hand signal. At a minimum, need to start training on this and figuring out what the timeline is for opening the hydrant, making sure that the driver operator is ready to receive water. Once the hydrant catcher removes enough hose to wrap around the hydrant and anchor the hose, then he gives a signal to the driver operator to proceed into the fire. Four-way hydrant valves, sometimes if we need a second pumper to run off of our hydrant, we can place one of those four-way valves, and usually we're probably not going to be able to do these because we aren't going to have enough water to supply 2 pumpers off of our city water.
Could you explain that though a little more in depth?
Which part?
Just how the four-way valve actually works.
So the four-way valve,
Go back one more.
Cause like, the arrow just shows it going
Yes.
to the right, as
Okay.
opposed to like, you have,
Does it turn?
Yep.
You have to use, water in, so you can relay, or you can steal a valve.
It looks
So
like that.
It's like a butterfly clapper valve in there, so you can take water and split it, or you can boost it.
Yeah, it looks like that green line kind of rotates in a 360 and it'll
Mhm.
send water where you
Like
want
it's
to see.
got an actual like valve, like you have to manually select what you
Oh,
want.
I see,
Yep.
it's faced the other way that time?
So you can boost it,
Mhm,
or if you wanna split it, you turn the valve and then.
Yep.
but these aren't showing
No.
this one hydrant supplying two different apparatus.
No, here, I think I figured it out. So, with this four-way, what it's doing is it's we are getting hydrant, or water from the hydrant to the attack engine. So, let's say that we're getting adequate volume out of here, but we're getting inadequate, pressure. So then we can use this, four-way valve out of this next slide. So we get a relay pumper, and while we're still getting, water to the fire, then we get this hooked up to the pumper, to flow to the pumper.
So basically, this four-way valve takes place of another engine in the relay pumping operation.
No, this is how you add a relay pumper at the hydrant. So, once this valve gets turned, I'll come over here so I'm not blocking it, then the hydrant is flowing water to the relay apparatus, and then the relay apparatus is pumping back through the valve to the fire. So, hydrant to relay, relay back to the valve, valve to the fire.
So instead of running a supply line from fire truck to fire truck,
Yes,
this just uses the hydrant line.
yes.
Okay. Sorry.
No,
I got it now.
okay, alright. We're learning together on this one.
I've never seen or heard of this, so.
Me either. First time for everything. We're both learning something today. But that was a great question. Thank you. All right. So talking about a reverse leg. Oh, hey, here you go. I actually do have some more notes on this. Yeah, this is basically what we just talked about. So the reverse lay is when the pumper must go to the fire before laying a supply line. A reverse lay should be deployed from the incident to the water source. It's the quickest way to lay a hose if the apparatus is laying the hose must stay at the water source, such as if we are drafting or boosting hydrant pressure. So this is where we might want to be using one of those four-way valves. Hose bed setup for reverse lay should be loaded so that the first coupling that comes off the hose bed is male, so that we're ready to start fighting fire. A standard method for establishing a relay pumping operation when using 2.5 or 3 inches of supply line. Long lays of hose of this size is necessary to make sure that we have a pumper at the hydrant to increase the pressure being supplied to those. It's the most direct way to supplement hydrant pressure and establish drafting operations. There are some disadvantages to doing the reverse lay. It can delay the initial fire attack because you have to remove tools and equipment from the apparatus and place them at the scene and stage them before the apparatus can proceed to the water source, which also causes the pump operator to stay at the water source, preventing them from seeing the fire grounds and from performing other essential fire ground activities. So basically, you're losing an extra man. Commonly, it involves 2 pumpers, an attack pumper and a water supply. The first arriving pumper will start an initial fire attack using the water from its tank. The second arriving will lay a supply line from the attack pumper back to the water supply. If we're doing a reverse lay, the 4-way hydrant valve is optional, but it can be used. That's what we were talking about a couple of slides ago. Here's a way that we can do it with if we had to do this, this is gonna be the way that we're gonna wanna do it. We're gonna take that 2.5 pre-connect off the back, throw a gated Y on the end of it, and then operate 2 3/4 off the end of it. It's gonna be very labor intensive. It's gonna take a lot of time for us to try to set this up. This is why this is why we usually almost always take the tanker on every fire, even in the city, because hydrants are unreliable. Amy, what's the difference between a forward lay and a reverse lay?
One is, the engine is at the fire, so we stop the hydrant, go to the fire.
Okay.
And then the other one is we hit the fire first, get all the stuff off, pull the hose line off, then go to the hydrant.
Good. All right. All right. So, yes, Jamie.
But I can answer.
All right. Let's have it. What you got?
I would say a forward lay would be more of a fully involved structure that we're going to be defensive on from the start,
Okay.
and we have the time to get there. A reverse lay would be something that we need to hit fast. Maybe people inside, maybe only a garage on fire, and we need to hit it real quick. So let's get to the fire first. Let's get some water on it, and then reverse lay back to the hydrant. That would be my.
Or a long driveway.
Yep.
Yeah,
long
long
driveway.
driveway, yeah.
Especially if we're getting ready to do
Side
tanker
switches.
shuttle.
When you switched them.
Forward lay would be we have time.
Forward lay is pumper at the fire. Reverse lay is pumper at the water source.
So laying in. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I always thought forward lay was laying into the fire.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, forward lay is laying into the fire.
Yeah, but
Like pumper at the fire.
yes. Stopping in a hydrant, letting somebody off, they wrap the hydrant and drive off. That's forward lay. Correct? Or is
Yes,
that,
that's
okay.
correct.
Yeah. I just need to set it wrong.
Yep. Alright, so talking about deploying our pre-connected hose lines. Steps are gonna vary with each kind of hose load. So we use triple loads, with the exception of our 2.5s on the back, which I believe are flat loaded. Can deploy to either side or from the rear of the apparatus, which also includes the bumper line off of engine 72, which is a sideways flat load. Minuteman loads. Do I have any? I do not. Advancing the Minuteman load, you can deploy without dragging a hose on the ground, which is one of the fastest ways to move hoses because you're not trying to drag along, creating more friction. Deploys pretty quickly without a lot of kinks or bends. Advancing the triple layer load, want to place the nozzle and fold the first fold tier on your shoulder and walk away from the apparatus and towards the fire. On our 2.5 sections, they can be pre-connected. Sometimes they might be deployed as an attack line. Sometimes they might be deployed as a supply line. Could be on either side of the hose bed. Might require some adapters either to connect with our FBC or to connect with our attack lines like that gateway we were talking about, or it might need a reducer for a nozzle. To deploy individual sections from a flat accordion or horseshoe load, we need to load sections of hose onto the shoulders of a series of firefighters. We want to do one firefighter per section. We're going to need multiple firefighters to carry the hose to the desired location once it's disconnected from the remainder of the hose in the bed. Because all the folds in the accordion and flat load are similar in length, you should be able to load several folds onto a shoulder directly from your hose bed. Burst hose lines, those are bad. That's just reviewing through NIOSH and firefighter close calls. Burst hose lines and burn through hose lines are the fastest way that firefighters get hurt and get killed. Water pressure will decrease, so the flow may stop, and the burst hose line needs to be replaced ASAP. What are two methods that can be used to deploy pre-connected hose lines? Lance, give me one.
Flat load.
Okay, Brian?
Minuteman.
Alright. What do we use? What are our two common ones that we use?
Flat load and modified triple weight.
Alright, here's our next objective for the day. We're going to talk about a couple of methods of advancing hose lines. Once our hose lines have been laid out from the attack pumper, they have to be advanced into position for applying water onto the fire. Advancing hose over flat surfaces with no obstacles is very simple using most advancement methods. It becomes more difficult when the hoses have to be deployed up or down stairways, from standpipes, up ladders, and deep into buildings. They can be advanced more easily before charging because water adds weight and pressure and makes them more difficult to maneuver, but it can be often unsafe to enter a burning building with an uncharged line, and we have to know how to handle charged and uncharged lines. And we're also going to need to know how to extend a hand line. It's been a very long time since I've been on a fire where we've had to extend one, but it's common enough that we need to be familiar with the practice.
They shipped out to you recently?
Yes, actually, we had the one way out in the county about 3 months ago. Working line drag is one of the quickest, easiest ways to advance a charged hose line at ground level. Before advancing into the structure, you must be alert for potential dangers such as backdraft, flashover, and structural collapse. An uncharged attack hose line is advanced to the designated point of entry. The firefighter may need to remain in each corner or doorway to help guide hose lines into the structure. So general safety guidelines when advancing into a burning structure, we want to check for and remove kinks and bends from the hose line as we advance. We want to open the nozzle fully before we go inside so we can bleed air from the hose and make sure that we have adequate water flow. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we're selecting the desired pattern, especially if we've got that fog nozzle. And then we want to position the nozzle operator and all hose team members on the same side of the hose line. Check for heat using thermal imaging. We can also spray a small amount of water at the top of the door and see if steam is produced.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, that was a new one for me. Always assume there's heat behind any door. Great way to stay safe.
Yeah, I guess you could recommend if you're just bleeding your hose line, just do it on the door.
Hey, there you go. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Advancing the hose, up and down stairways, we want to try to keep the stairs clear. We want to try to avoid sharp ends in the hose as much as we can. If we've got the manpower for it, we want to put a firefighter at each turn. That way they can move it around without getting it bent or hung up on railings, debris, anything like that.
That's the worst job instruction.
When we're advancing hoses vertically, either up a stairway or down a stairway, an uncharged hose line is going to be better. It's going to be easy. I won't say better. It's going to be easier because it's going to be a lot more flexible and have a lot less weight.
Do our SOGs say anything about that? Last department I worked for, I know that
Yeah,
they,
can't go inside with them.
you couldn't go inside at all without a charged hose line. Do our SOGs have anything that you're aware of? I can look them up later.
To my knowledge, it is unspecified, but I will double check and get back with you after class.
Yeah, I'll look too.
Shoulder carry works great for stairway advancement, when the hose is carried instead of dragged. Although we're not really gonna be able to do a shoulder carry with a charged hose line. This is gonna be something that's dependent on the scene, on your incident scene and what your fire conditions are. So that, just use your instincts and pay attention to your fire and your surroundings. Minuteman load is a great way to go up and down stairs because you've already got half your hose load on your shoulder. When you're going up the stairs, lay your uncharged hose against the outside wall. That way we're keeping our stairway as clear as possible for extra firefighters coming up. Once again, avoiding those sharp bends and kinks. Going downstairs, uncharged is easier. I would be very hesitant at going downstairs to a below grade fire with an uncharged hose. Firefighters die in basements. Yeah, and there it is. I will always say take a charged hose line in a below grade fire. Down the stairway, we want to deploy our excess hose to try to not obstruct the stairs as much as possible. Stretch it outside the stairway whenever we can. We need to be positioned on the stairs to feed hose down to the nozzle team. Moving up and down stairs, especially in a commercial structure, takes a lot of manpower. Unfortunately, we don't always have it, so we're gonna have to improvise and do the best we can with what we have, at least until our mutual aid shows up. But, perfect world, we've got enough manpower, firefighters at the pinch points and at the corners. And we also have to make sure that we're gonna have enough to get to the fire, because stairs eat up a lot of hose. Working off of the standpipe, fires is gonna be beyond the reach of pre-connected hose lines, so we're probably gonna have to disconnect our pre-connect lines and hoof it.
Other than schools, do we have any standby?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, the schools are the only ones. We do have, several of our single-story commercial structures have FDCs,
Yes.
but in the pre-plans I have seen so far,
Schools.
they have only been FDCs to the sprinkler system.
Gotcha.
But really the high school
Yeah.
is gonna be our only one that has a standpipe, and we need to make sure we do a walkthrough and find out
I
where
bet
that's going out.
Harrisonville's probably got a lot that from mutual aid stuff.
Mhm. Yep, no, that's a good point though.
Thank you.
Our high-rise packs, we do have a high-rise pack on the back of both engine 72 and engine 73. It's a pre-assembled length of 100 feet of 1 3/4. It's usually gonna be up to local SOPs and SOGs to decide how those high-rise packs are set up. That's just how ours is. Gotta carry it up to the fire floor. Sometimes I'm gonna have to hoof it up an aerial ladder or up an interior stairway. We don't have an aerial, so it's either gonna be exterior ladder or up a stairway. So that might be one of those ones where we go upstairs and hoist it up through a window. That might be faster, might be easier, but it also is gonna depend on where we're at. Crews are normally gonna stop one floor below the fire floor and connect attack lines to our standpipes. If it's in an enclosed stairway, it's acceptable to connect on the fire floor. The reason for that is so that we have a safe haven to retreat to. Standpipes are usually going to be in the stairway or near the stairway, and it can get you a general idea of the floor layout when you observe the floor below. We want to be alert for pressure relief devices, and we need to follow our SOGs for removal and connection.
We're hitting the floor.
I got it. I'll take it, Jim.
Okay. We'll continue where. All right. Now that we are back from running calls. Alright, so when we're hooking up to the standpipes, we want to try and use a gated wide whenever we can. That way we can add a second hand line if we have more companies coming in that have additional high-rise packs that they're going to bring up. Or if we're wanting to use those same manpower to bring one of our pre-connects up if they don't want to use a high-rise pack. Once we get the connection done, we want to make sure that we're deploying our extra hose upwards towards the floor that's above the fire. That way we're pulling down instead of trying to pull up. Here's one method. As you can see, they've coiled the extras up and down the stairs for both attack lines coming off of the standpipe. So on here it's showing that they made their standpipe connection on the floor below the fire. So we can probably infer that this is not a closed stairwell. Sometimes we might have to improvise a standpipe. So most modern building codes mandate installation of standpipes and structures that are 3 stories and taller. Older buildings and buildings that don't have 3 stories might not have standpipes, or they could be obstructed or out of service for construction, demolition, tampering, disrepair, natural disasters, that kind of thing. So an improvised standpipe, it's a way to supply water to the building without a standpipe system. We can do it either through an interior stairway or exterior. So with both of these, this is going to be one of our supply lines, probably a 2.5 inch. Here's coming up an interior stairway, and it's tied off at each floor. And then from the outside, it's not going to be able to be tied off until we get to the solid support on the floor that we need it at. Or no, I'm sorry, excuse me. There is an additional solid support there in the middle, but they don't have it tied off on every floor. When we're improvising a standpipe, there's going to be a delay in getting water on the fire. So we need to make sure that we're taking that into account when we're planning our strategy. Interior. On our standpipes, the interior stairway stretch for these, it's going to be labor intensive. We can use it in an open shaft or a stairwell in the center. We don't want to try to run a standpipe curling around every stair. Uncharged hose line suspended in the middle of the stairs is going to be much faster for that. Hose rolls and bundles can be carried up the stairs. We secure them to the stair railing at each level, and then lowered to the point where we can attach another section. And then we need to keep in mind that just because we're advancing a dry hose line because it's lighter, we also need to remember what size that hose is so that we're fighting to our supply, not the other way around. No, yes. Outside stretch, we can use it either for the lower, we use it usually for the lower floors of high-rise buildings. We're gonna hoist that up on the exterior of the building, so we're gonna need to make sure that we've got manpower to do the hoisting and the securing. Hose can fall back down from the building, so we wanna make sure that we're hoisting at least some of it into the window and making sure that we're getting tied off to solid supports. Advancing it up a ladder, sometimes we are gonna have to advance those up a ladder. Either standpipes aren't available, we don't have access to stairways, or we don't have another viable option. It's gonna be easier and safer with an uncharged line. The firefighter that is healing the ladder can be used to help feed the hose on the ladder in most cases. If the hose is already charged, it may be a good idea to go ahead and drain it before advancing it. Only use one person on each section of the ladder in order to avoid overloading it. Rope and hose tools are great for advancement here. Then once you're ready to start your fire attack, then you can charge the hose. I want to make sure that we're not exceeding the weight limit of the ladder. Lance, what's the difference between advancing a charged hose line and an uncharged hose line?
It's easier to advance an uncharged hose line.
Okay, which one's safer?
Charge.
Okay. Sometimes we are going to need to operate it from the ground ladder. Operating a ladder, one off of an aerial ladder, it's going to be easier than trying to operate it off of a ground ladder. Aerials can also be used as portable standpipes. I've never seen it done. I think it'd be really cool. I'll have to look up a video and see if I can get that playing later. But usually you're going to take the high-rise pack up there, you're going to connect it either to the nozzle, or I believe some apparatus do have.
Most of them have a tip at the end that you just connect right to the tip.
Cool. I like
But the only ladder we're gonna use is Metro's, probably, maybe Lee Summits, but Metro's has one that's right at the end. There's about 6 rungs down, just hook up to it and
Sweet. I
start
like it.
running. So yeah, you can park your boat right at the second or third story and run on in to save lives and property, which is our main focus in this job.
Hey, there you go. All right, here's our last objective for the day. Be able to explain how to operate different types of hose lines, nozzles, and master stream devices. So, we're going to want to direct the flow of water from the water supply through the nozzle to the fire. The fire stream can also include additives such as foam. Our hose streams are going to be affected by the velocity of the water, the flow rate of the water, gravity, wind direction, air friction, operating pressure, nozzle design, and the condition of the nozzle opening. Nozzles are used for applying water or foam directly onto burning material to reduce its temperature. Applying it into an open flame reduces the temperature so that we can advance our hose lines, reduces the temperature of the upper gas layer, so be careful because you can bring that gas layer down on top of you. It's good for dispersing hot smoke and fire gases from the area. I'll catch up to that in a second. We can use them to create water currents to protect us and property from the heat, create a barrier between the fuel and the fire, and performing hydraulic ventilation. Hose streams can best be described in the terms of the patterns they form, the nozzles that create the patterns, the type of control valves that permit the flow of water through the nozzles. A couple of factors that limit hose streams are the size of nozzle opening, the nozzle pressure, the size of opening influences the reach or the distance of the stream, and smooth bore produces a tightly packed solid stream. Just 1 second. So, operating off of our small hose lines, starting with the one firefighter method. These are good for small ground cover fires, vehicle fires, rekindling during overhaul, rubbish and trash fires, and fires in outbuildings and sheds. 2 firefighter method is a minimum number for a tack line during interior operations. You can apply a hose strap or a rope hose tool to reduce your nozzle reaction. So the nozzle firefighter is going to hold the nozzle with one hand and the hose with the other. Rest that hose line against your waist or your hip. Your backup firefighter, you want about 3 feet behind you on the same side as the nozzle operator. Hold your hose with both hands pressed against the waist or leg. Must keep the hose straight behind the nozzle operator. Don't direct a fog stream into a ventilation opening during offensive interior operations. The interior crew is in the room or area immediately beyond it. Do not direct a hose stream of any kind into that vented opening. For large hose line operations, sometimes we might need to have a 2.5 or a larger line for defense. So it's used for exposure protection or overhaul if a master stream is not available. Firefighter can use a hose strap or rope hose tool to reduce their fatigue, and does not really permit much maneuvering of the nozzle. So you're gonna wanna curl this back in on itself and sit on top of the crossover. 2 firefighter for large hose lines. Same way for small hand lines, you may need to anchor the line further back. Operating nozzle. Each nozzle is going to handle differently at the recommended pressure. The nozzle pattern might affect the ease of operation. The velocity and the flow rate of the water coming from the nozzle can cause your nozzle reaction. Usually one person can operate an 1.5 or 1.75 hose line. 1.75 and larger usually will require more. Here's a nice little graphic on friction loss. These inline pressure gauges are kind of neat, but it's a good rule of thumb that you're going to lose pressure from your pumper to your attack line, because we lose friction on each section of hose, and we lose friction at each coupling and at the nozzle. It's increased by the rough linings, damaged couplings, sharp bends, the number of adapters that we're using, the length of the hose, and the hose diameter. We can reduce these or overcome them entirely by increasing our hose size, adding parallel hoses, increasing our pump pressure, and removing kinks or bends. So here's a great example of demonstrating how gravity can affect it. They lose pressure when they go and they're fighting above grade, and they gain pressure when they're fighting below grade. Water hammer. Water hammer happens when we start closing our valves too quickly, because that causes a sudden jerk and the water to back pressure against the furthest device bag. So we want to make sure that we are fighting our water hammer by opening and closing all of our valves slowly. It's hard to be patient when we're fighting a fire, but this is a great way to help make sure that our equipment's going to last us for a long time. Lance, how can we combat nozzle reaction?
By securing the partner. Combat nozzle reaction.
Mm-hmm. Like the nozzle bucking when you're fighting fire, like for pressure changes or something.
Straps.
Okay. Brian, what causes friction loss? Just give me
Appliances.
Okay. Jamie, can you give me another one?
For friction loss,
Yeah.
less hose if you can help it. Larger diameter
He
hose.
said 1.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, if that works.
Amy, what should we do to avoid water hammering?
Open and close valve slowly.
Alright, our master stream
He
devices,
said 1.
it's usually going to be deployed when the fire is beyond the effectiveness of hand lines. There's a need for hose streams in areas unsafe for firefighters, like a hazmat incident. You want to make sure that you place it back far enough that you have the ability to maneuver it if you need to. You're usually going to flow a minimum of 350 gallons a minute. You want nothing less than 2.5-inch supply lines go into it. Small quick attack devices can be temporarily supplied by one of them. A third 2.5-inch line can be required when greater quantities of water are required. I've never seen that, but I'd imagine there are some instances where it is necessary. And then there are several of the portable ones that are equipped with a 4-inch or larger coupling. One of the problems with master stream devices is that when we start using them, large amounts of water accumulate inside the structure. It's usually going to require at least 2 firefighters to deploy it, and you're going to need at least 1 firefighter positioned at the nozzle to operate the device unless it's in a hazardous area. And if the situation is too dangerous, it can be anchored into position so that it can be left alone to do its own thing. One thing to caution, talking about the increased water weight, increases the potential for structural collapse. Elevated master stream devices, those are going to be up from our aerials. They can apply water to upper stories or as a direct attack or supply for hand lines like we were just talking about. They can provide exposure protection, They're commonly deployed by quints, aerial ladders, and aerial platforms. How are master stream devices used? Anybody?
How are master stream devices used in large defensive type fires or quick attack fires?
Alright, do we have any questions over anything we've talked about today? Alright, that's it. We'll take a break, wait for it to cool off, and come back for the practicals. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.
Oh, actually, real quick, I do have a quiz for you.
See you in October.
Yeah.
Oh, because it's not gonna be cold until then.
Yeah, right. Alright. So,
I don't have a pen.
No, this is a test, not a quiz.
Thank you.
and Gene.
That's it.
And today is the 4th for the date.
1776.
Yep. And when you're done, if you'll just bring them up to me, I'll grade them real quick and I'll give you some feedback for them.
Today is July of 23.
22.
Come on up. Come on, bring it on up.
10 questions, Jamie.
Oh.
Oh wait, come here, I'm gonna tell you how you did. Cool, thank you, good job.
Oh, you beat me.
Yes, sir. I thought that was a good class. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
I'm gonna go after, right?
7.
That one was tricky. I'm not sure what it was asking.
Yeah, that's fair. So for this one.
I understand it now after really read
Okay,
it, but
yep, I got you.
yeah, I just thought that was kind of like the answer was more of a.
No, good job though.
Thank you.
Wait, Amy, come on.
I know,
She's
I
coming,
gotta
she's
get, I
coming.
gotta get my snacks.
Snacks.
Romance at sea in October.
What'd you get, Jamie?
80.
Dang it. Yeah, I always miss that too.
On this one, working line, just want to pull at the front end.
Okay.
Any questions?
Nope,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
It was a good class, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Aw.
Appreciate it.
What do we do with these, sir?
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Ciao. All left over from that brush fire we had last night. I'll have to sweep that up before I go home.
I had, one round of fireworks. Get pretty close and then I'll pull it back on my smooth shot. Going like this.
Do you see that set of cones that I have right there?
Yeah.
I want you to advance that hose all the way to the cones, all right?
good?
Yep. Got it.
Oh, hang on.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
I need to go towards me a little bit more.
Alright.
There we go. Got it.
Coupling.
Okay.
Just gonna dustbin that one.
No.
I do, but it's not on. I can turn it on though.
Yeah, it's good for you.
Got it. You want the couplings on top or on either?
That won't really matter this time.
Okay.
Nozzle.
What am I supposed to record?
Yeah, just keep recording this.
We're usually at count time.
Coupling. Got it.
Coupling.
I already told the camera that.
Coupling.
Coupling. Instructor getting dirty. How do you train it up for a job that kills?
Yes. Dirt hose doesn't get worked very much.
He's got a lot of B-roll on that one. Dawn.
And then your interest of letters on flat loads. The job the flow water part of that.
is now.
Okay.
I think I messed it up when I zoomed it out.
Okay, no problem.
This one. Coupling.
Hold on one second.
Nozzle. We don't do that anymore? All right. All right, nozzle. All right.
This?
Yeah.
What else do you need flow? Do you need alternate flow?
Yeah. I need all three to flow as one firefighter and all three to flow as two firefighters.
You gonna throw it in pump gear?
What's that?
You throw it in pump gear, I'll charge you real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Front crosslay. Just sport, no advancing. Yep, front crosslay red. Standing up race. Yep. All right, whenever you're ready.
Watermelon?
Yep.
Watermelon?
All the way down. Good job.
Watermelon?
All right, Dom. You ready?
Dom.
Yep. Face shield, Dom. There you go. Alright, communicate with your partner whenever you're ready. Ready? Ready! Alright, hand center on your nozzle. Alright. Lower, put her down.
Jamie gotta go?
Yep, Jamie's gotta go.
You pump.
I didn't have a one. I didn't have a you mind staying here up and working real quick? Yep.
Next side. Ready? Open in the nozzle. Good. Okay. Yes!
Go.
usually Harrisonville, 3001 East Elm Street. It's gonna be the Crown Care Rehab Hall. 76-year-old low hemoglobin, requesting a med unit, 1742. Dispatch Wildwood Command. Wildwood Command. DHO med 72, transfer 1, state deceased. Med 73 available, state remains. 971 will handle the law. Med 72 transporting engine 73 available from the alarm. Med 71 responding mutual aid Harrisonville 3001 East Elm Street at the Crown Care 1743. Dispatch 73. Engine 73. Stand by for officers. Copy.
does kind of stuff that, hey, you're brand new, why don't you do it, or something, but, here, yeah. No, that's fine. Okay, because I was like, well, let's, he goes, well, either way, it's going into your file.
All right, that's the lovely part of instructing. Just spent the last 30 minutes making sure that all the training records are entered, both for on the paper side and in the computer. Thank you very much for watching. Hope I didn't do well.